Welcome. And here, in this quiet moment before the journey begins, I invite you to step with me into a story. The story of a single invention that changed everything: the automobile. In this video, we will drift gently across 140 years of history, as if carried by a slow, steady current of time. We'll begin in a world where cobblestone streets lay buried beneath the weight of horse manure, where cities breathed differently, and life moved at the pace of hooves. From there, we'll pass through the roaring factories whose strength helped win World War II, glide along the chrome-bright highways of 1950s America, and finally, we'll race forward into an electric, autonomous future that is already arriving at our doorstep. Along the way, we'll witness the birth of the car in 1886, a small spark that would grow into a force reshaping the world. We'll meet the man who made the automobile something everyone could reach. We'll feel the tremor of an oil crisis that forced engineers to reinvent the wheel itself. We'll explore the golden age of supercars, the quiet precision of Japan's quality revolution, and the moment a Silicon Valley startup rewrote the rules of an entire industry. This is not just the history of machines. It is the history of how the world around us came to be, the roads we travel, the lives we lead, the future we move toward. So take a breath, settle in, and buckle up. Let's go. Before we talk about cars, we must first drift back into the world they were born into. A world straining under a burden it could no longer carry. A world quietly pleading for a solution. By the year 1880, New York City alone was alive with motion. Its streets filled each day with somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 horses. They pulled carts, carried people, and trotted endlessly through the avenues. But with their labor came a cost the city could not ignore. Each horse left behind nearly 22 pounds of manure every day. Slowly, steadily, the streets disappeared beneath it. In the heat of summer, the waste dried into a fine, drifting dust, rising into the air like a grim brown fog. In winter, it thickened into a cold, foul-smelling sludge that clung to boots and wheels and lingered in every breath. The horses themselves lived short, difficult lives. A working city horse rarely survived more than 2 years before collapsing from exhaustion. Their bodies were often left where they fell, lying in the streets for days. It was a crisis of public health, growing heavier and darker with every passing year as cities swelled with people and movement. Steam-powered locomotives did exist, but they could travel only where rails had been laid. The roads themselves were rough and rutted, turning to deep mud when the weather turned foul. Until the world waited, crowded, burdened, and ready for something new. On a quiet winter morning, on January 29, 1886, a German engineer named Karl Benz stepped into history without yet knowing it. In the calm halls of the Imperial Patent Office in Berlin, he filed a simple document, patent number 37435. On its pages lived an idea shaped in metal and motion, a curious little vehicle with 3 wheels, a single-cylinder 4-stroke engine offering just 3/4 of a horsepower and capable of no more than 10 gentle miles per hour. By the standards of our modern world, it seems almost quaint, a mechanical whisper compared to the roar of today's machines. And yet, this was the moment. The first spark. The birth certificate of the automobile. But tucked inside this story is a detail that glows brighter than the invention itself. That August, while Karl worked, unaware, his wife Bertha made a quiet, determined choice. She took the their car on a 65 Einmile journey from Mannheim to Pforzheim. No permission, no precedent, just courage. Along the way, she refueled at a pharmacy, coaxing life back into the engine. She mended a broken chain with nothing more than her hairpin. She softened the brake blocks with her own garter, solving each problem with the calm certainty of someone who understood not just the machine, but the moment. And in doing so, she proved far more than that the car could travel a road. She showed the world what it could become. Every road trip since, every winding highway, every quiet country drive has followed in the faint but fearless tire tracks Bertha Benz left behind. From the moment the very first automobiles wandered onto public roads, two things happened right away. As naturally as breath and shadow, people raced them, and people wished they could go faster. In 1893, in the quiet hum of Springfield, Massachusetts, the Duryea brothers built America's first gasoline-powered automobile. A small machine, but a spark that would soon set imaginations racing. And only 1 year later, in 1894, the world gathered for something entirely new. Its first motor race, Paris to Rouen, 78 miles. The competitors moved at just over 11 miles per hour, but to the people watching, it must have felt like witnessing the future begin to stir. But the moment that truly lifted the world's eyes, the moment that made hearts beat a little quicker, came in 1899. A Belgian racing driver named Camille Janazzi stepped into a strange, torpedo-shaped electric car called La Jamais Content, the Never Satisfied. And perhaps that name was fitting, for Janazzi drove it with a hunger for the impossible. He guided the sleek machine across the earth at 65.79 miles per hour, becoming the first human being ever to break 100 kilometers per hour. And here is the gentle twist in the tale. In 1899, the fastest car in the world was an electric car. In less than a decade, the automobile had traveled from laboratory novelty to competitive wonder. The race, in every sense of the word, had begun, and the world was already leaning forward, eager to see how fast the future could go. Henry Ford did not invent the automobile, but he imagined a world where everyone could hold the wheel of their own future. When the Model T first rolled into the world in 1908, it carried a price of $850. A number far too high for most working families to reach. Yet Ford saw something no one else dared to dream. A car that grew more affordable with every passing year, like a promise slowly drifting down to earth. Then, in 1913, at his Highland Park plant in Michigan, Ford changed the rhythm of industry itself. He introduced the world's first moving assembly line, a river of work flowing steadily forward. The time to build a single car fell to just 93 minutes. Costs crumbled. And by 1924, the Model T cost only $260, its price gently lowered again and again, like a stone polished smooth over 15 years. 15 million Model Ts would eventually find their way into the world. At the height of their creation, they were nearly 40% of all the cars that touched the earth. And then, in 1914, Ford did something unexpected, something bold and quietly extraordinary. He doubled worker wages to $5 a day, not out of charity, but from a deeper understanding. If the people who built the cars could afford to buy them, the flow of customers would never run dry. That simple, brilliant insight did more than build a company. It helped shape the rise of the modern middle class, like a river carving a new path through the landscape of American life. By the 1920s, the automobile was no longer just a machine that carried people from one place to another. It had become something far more personal, a reflection of identity itself. Wealthy drivers, dreaming in metal and motion, commissioned bespoke bodies from Bentley, Hispano-Suiza, and Bugatti. These weren't merely vehicles. They were sculptures on wheels, Art Deco masterpieces shaped in chrome and steel, gliding across the world like moving works of art. In 1923, a new kind of temple rose in France, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, a place where engines roared without rest, where speed was worshipped, and where Bentley, in all its determination, would claim victory 5 times before the decade closed. Racing was no longer a pastime. It had become a spectacle shared across the globe. And in the quiet glow of showrooms, another revolution began. General Motors stepped forward with an idea that changed everything. While Ford offered one car in one color, GM offered choice, different shapes, different prices, styles, refreshed each year, and for the first time, installment payment plans. You no longer needed immense wealth to own a beautiful car. You simply needed to want one deeply enough. By 1927, there were 23 million registered vehicles in the United States, one for every 5 Americans. The automobile had moved beyond luxury. It had become a way of life, woven into the rhythm of everyday existence, guiding a nation into a new era of movement and possibility. Then, on an autumn morning of October 29, 1929, the world seemed to hold its breath. The stock market fell, not gently, but like a great stone dropping into still water, sending waves of fear across the nation. And the automobile industry, once roaring with promise, slowed to a near-silent pause. U.S. car sales, once 5.3 million strong, dwindled to just 1.1 million by 1932. In only 3 years, nearly 80% of that bright, booming world faded away. Factories shuttered their doors, workers walked home with empty hands and heavy hearts, and the grand dream of an age built on wheels seemed as though it might simply drift away. But then, as history often does, it shifted. Something vast arrived, something that changed the shape of everything: war. On the first day of 1942, the hum of civilian car production went quiet. Every factory floor, every engineer's mind, every welder's steady hands turned toward a single purpose. Ford's Willow Run plant, a building so immense it seemed almost its own horizon, reshaped itself to craft Bo-24 Liberator bombers. And by 1944, in a rhythm steady and astonishing, one aircraft rose from that place every hour. Detroit did more than endure the long, hard years of the 1930s and 40s. It helped shape the outcome of the war itself. And when the soldiers finally returned home, they returned to a nation that remembered how to build, how to imagine, how to move forward. And they came home to a generation ready, eager to drive. If there is a golden age of the American automobile, it rests gently in the wide, sunlit cradle of the 1950s. Full stop. The war had been won. The economy swelled with new hope. Gas cost 29 cents a gallon. And the cars seemed to gleam with their own quiet wonder. In 1955 alone, Americans brought home 7.9 million new cars, a number so large it echoed through the years that followed. Guided by the imagination of GM designer Harley Earl, these machines borrowed their spirit from jet fighters. Tail fins rose like wings searching for the sky. Chrome shimmered. Colors burst into view like fresh blossoms after rain. Cadillac, Chevrolet, Buick, each one felt like a small, shining promise of the future. And in 1956, President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, setting in motion the creation of 47,856 miles of interstate highway, the greatest public works project the nation had ever known. Those long ribbons of road stitched the coasts together, sparked the birth of the suburbs, and turned the road trip into something almost sacred. Drive-in movies glowing beneath the stars, drive-in diners humming softly through the night, rock and roll drifting from open windows. The 1950s didn't simply sell cars. They offered something deeper, something felt in the quiet of the open road. In the 1960s, the world of cars began to shift, quietly at first, like a breeze that grows into a wind. It was a decade when the idea of what a car could be and who could dare to build one started to change forever. In Britain, in 1961, Jaguar revealed the E-Type. It glimmered like something sculpted from speed itself. Even Enzo Ferrari, a man not easily moved, looked upon it and declared it the most beautiful car ever made. And though it seemed like a dream carved in metal, it could be had for around £2,000, an astonishing price for a machine that could soar to 150 miles per hour and turn every street into its own quiet stage. Far away in Italy in 1963, something unexpected was born. Lamborghini, created not by a famous racing dynasty, but by Ferruccio Lamborghini, a builder of tractors who had once argued with Enzo Ferrari himself. Instead of walking away, he imagined something better, and then he built it. and he was right to believe he could. Meanwhile, in Japan, 1966 brought something far simpler, quieter, almost humble, the Toyota Corolla. No drama, no flourish, just a dependable, honest car that people everywhere found themselves drawn to. Year after year, mile after mile, the world kept buying it. And now, with more than 50 million sold, it stands as the best-selling car model in history. And in Germany, the Volkswagen Beetle kept rolling forward, almost shyly. As it approached 21 million units produced, it became more than a car, it became a symbol. A gentle reminder that the great cultures of the automobile were no longer found only in America. On an October morning in 1973, a quiet shift began, one that would ripple across continents and decades. The members of OPEC gathered, and with a single decisive announcement, an oil embargo unfurled against the United States and several Western nations. And almost as swiftly as a cloud giving way to rain, the price of a barrel of oil rose from $3 to nearly $12. It happened not gradually, but suddenly, overnight. Across the country, gas stations fell silent, pumps ran dry, and so a new rhythm took hold, odd even rationing. Whether you could fill your tank depended on the last digit of your license plate, a small number now carrying surprising weight. Long lines curled across highways and through towns, stretching for miles like anxious rivers. In some places, people slept in their cars, holding their place in a queue that seemed to move with the slowness of time itself. The age of the muscle car, the roaring, unrestrained symbol of American excess, faded almost instantly. 8 miles to the gallon no longer felt bold, it felt impossible. In response, Congress introduced CAF standards in 1975, the first federal fuel economy rules in American history. They required automakers to reach an average of 27.5 miles per gallon, a new horizon for an industry once defined by power over prudence. And in that moment of change, something else emerged, quietly, steadily, like a stream gathering strength. Japanese automakers, long builders of small and efficient cars, found themselves aligned perfectly with America's sudden needs. Honda, Toyota, and Datsun had not caused the crisis. For most of the automobile's early history, crashing was seen as a simple truth of the road, a burden placed squarely on the driver's shoulders. Cars were not built to shield you, nor to soften the world's harshness. They were built only to move, to rumble forward across the earth. But then, slowly at first, and later with a sudden rush, everything began to change. In 1952, a quiet yet extraordinary idea emerged from the mind of Hungarian-Austrian engineer Béla Barényi, the crumple zone. A vision that a car, instead of resisting impact, could give way with intention, folding in a controlled embrace, absorbing the violence of a crash before it ever touched the people inside. And just 7 years later, in 1959, Volvo engineer Niels Bohlin gifted the world the 3-point seatbelt. Volvo, believing that a life saved mattered more than any competitive edge, released the patent freely to every automaker across the globe. A gesture as humble as it was revolutionary. By 1968, seatbelts were no longer optional in the United States. They were law. In 1973, the Oldsmobile Toronado carried within it the first passenger airbag ever offered in a production car. And in 1978, Bosch and Mercedes-Benz unveiled the world's first electronic anti-lock braking system, helping cars stay steady when the road turned dangerous. The results have been nothing short of astonishing. In the mid-1960s, America saw about 5.5 deaths for every 100 million miles driven. Today, that number has fallen below 1.4. Through engineering, through regulation, through a shared will to protect one another. If the 1950s were the golden age of the American car, then the 1980s were the golden age of the supercar. A decade when speed and imagination intertwined, and the world looked toward Germany for what came next. In 1986, Porsche revealed the 959, a machine that felt less like a car and more like a quiet revolution. Twin turbocharged, all-wheel drive, 450 horses held in perfect balance, a top speed brushing the edge of 197 miles per hour. Only 337 of them ever touched the earth. And when they did, automotive journalists found themselves reaching for words that no longer existed. It was, in its time, the most technologically sophisticated road car the world had ever known. 1 year later, Ferrari answered with the F40, the final creation personally approved by Enzo Ferrari before his passing in 1988. It arrived raw and unfiltered, like a creature carved from speed itself. No carpet, no radio, no power steering, just 478 horsepower and the quiet promise that it would test your courage every time you touched the throttle. Enzo called it the car he loved most, the one that carried his spirit. And meanwhile, the Ferrari Testarossa, with its unforgettable side strakes and its 390 horsepower flat 12, found its way onto bedroom walls across the world, glowing under the dreams of a generation. These were not simply fast machines. They were moments, bright, cultural sparks that showed the world something new. The 1980s whispered a truth, that performance and technology could walk hand in hand, that innovation did not mean abandoning passion. The supercar had arrived. While the West gazed dazzled at gleaming supercars, something quieter, yet far more extraordinary, was unfolding across the sea. In Japan, an industrial revolution was taking shape, not with noise or spectacle, but with patience, precision, and a kind of gentle determination that reshaped the world. Through the 1980s, Toyota, Honda, and Nissan were not simply building reliable cars. They were rebuilding the very idea of reliability itself. Factories hummed with a new rhythm, the Toyota production system, what we now call lean manufacturing. Waste was trimmed away like overgrown branches. Defects were caught before they could take root. And workers were given a rare kind of trust, the power to stop the entire line if something felt wrong. Over time, the world watched, learned, and quietly adopted these practices far beyond the realm of automobiles. Then, in 1989, Japan stepped gently but confidently into the world of European luxury. Lexus placed its offering at the feet of giants. The LS400 arrived at around $35,000, its closest European rival towering at twice the price. Press cars were disassembled, inspected, and lovingly reassembled after shipping, just to ensure not a single bolt had shifted on its long journey. Early reviewers searched for flaws and found instead something close to perfection. Years earlier, in 1982, Honda had opened its Marysville, Ohio plant, the first Japanese-owned automobile factory on American soil. Inside, quiet hands and disciplined processes produced vehicles that outshone their domestic competitors, not loudly, but with calm consistency. In the quiet dawn of a new decade, something subtle yet extraordinary drifted into the world of automobiles. Something as light and unseen as a breeze, yet powerful enough to reshape everything that followed. It was the computer, settling gently into the heart of the machine, and from that moment on, nothing was ever quite the same. In 1992, a remarkable creation emerged, almost like a legend stepping out of mist. McLaren revealed the F1, a road car that moved not just with speed, but with purpose, with a kind of fierce, focused grace. It carried within it a BMW V12 engine, strong and steady, and placed its driver at the center, as if inviting them to become one with the very spirit of motion. With a top speed of 240 miles per hour, it soared to the title of the world's fastest production car, holding that honor for 7 long years. And even now, many still whisper that it remains the greatest driver's car ever to touch the road. But quietly, far from the roar of engines and the flash of headlines, something even more transformative was taking shape. In 1997, in Japan, Toyota introduced the Prius, the first mass-produced hybrid vehicle. It moved slowly, almost shyly. Its shape was unusual, its presence gentle, and yet Like a small stream destined to become a river, it carried the future within it. All around, technology drifted into the everyday world of driving, settling into place as naturally as rain finds its way to Earth. GPS navigation, once the realm of distant satellites and silent military paths, now guided ordinary drivers through city streets and country roads. No one charted this path, yet it unfolded all the same. Like a quiet current shaping a valley, the SUV and truck revolution rose not from a plan, nor from a prediction, but from a choice repeated again and again. Americans simply reached for trucks and SUVs year after year until the entire landscape of the market bent gently around their hands. Once in 1990, cars and sedans filled the roads, making up nearly 2/3 of all vehicles sold in the United States. But time moves, preferences shift, and by the 2020s, the balance had turned over completely. Trucks, SUVs, and crossovers had grown to dominate, now flowing through the country as 4/5 of all new vehicles purchased. And at the heart of this great change stands one steady figure, the Ford F-Series pickup. As of 2024, it has held its place as the best-selling vehicle in America for 48 uninterrupted years. Not merely the best-selling truck, but the best-selling vehicle, full and complete, standing alone atop nearly half a century of roads and stories. For most of the early 2000s, if you whispered that the future of the car was electric, the world answered with laughter. Back then, electric cars drifted along the edges of possibility, slow, limited, and never taken seriously. They were like small clouds in a wide sky, noticed but not believed in. Then, in 2008, something shifted. Tesla delivered the Roadster, and it arrived not with a murmur, but with a spark. 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds, a range of 245 miles, and a price tag that declared, gently but firmly, that this was no compromise. It was a statement, a drop of rain falling with purpose. What followed was one of the most dramatic industrial transformations in modern memory. Tesla's valuation rose from almost nothing to over $1 trillion, expanding like a river fed by countless streams. Its momentum pushed every legacy automaker, Ford, GM, Volkswagen, Mercedes, to pour tens of billions into electrification programs they had doubted only weeks before. They too felt the pull of the changing tide. By the end of 2024, approximately 56 million electric vehicles moved quietly along roads across the world. No longer a niche, no longer a question, a movement, steady, growing, unstoppable, like water finding its path. In the final months of 2023, Chinese manufacturer BYD outsold Tesla in battery electric vehicles for the first time, signaling that the race had widened. The flow was now global, stretching across continents like a river meeting new branches. And though the European Union's 2035 plan for a full ban on new combustion engines softened in 2025, it began on a road that did not yet exist, a path imagined long before it was ever traveled. The road to self-driving. For many years, the self-driving car sat just beyond reach, the automobile industry's most tantalizing dream, and perhaps its most humbling test. Its story opened not in a bustling city, but in a wide, quiet desert. In 2004, DARPA invited machines to cross 150 miles of the Mojave, a journey meant only for the boldest of autonomous vehicles. Not a single one reached the end. The farthest traveler managed less than 8 miles before falling still, swallowed by the sand. But failure, like a stern teacher, whispered lessons, and engineers listened. By the next year, in 2005, a new champion emerged, Stanford's Stanley. Steady, patient, learning from every grain of desert wind, it completed the entire course. And soon after, in 2009, Google carried the idea from empty desert roads to the lively streets of California, launching its self-driving car project into the everyday world. Time moved forward, and with it, the dream grew. In 2016, Tesla released autopilot to its entire fleet through a simple software update that arrived quietly overnight. When dawn broke, millions of cars woke with a new ability: highway self-driving, the largest real-world deployment of autonomy the world had ever seen. Then, in October 2020, a new chapter opened. Waymo began offering fully driverless rides, no human hands on the wheel, no safety driver waiting in the wings, to anyone in Phoenix, Arizona who wished to ride. For the first time, the future sat in the passenger seat. And let us pause for a moment and truly feel the vastness of what this industry has become. Across the wide, turning Earth, there are now about 1.45 billion motor vehicles traveling its roads, a number so immense it almost hums in the background of modern life. And each year, like a great mechanical tide, factories around the world release nearly 90 million more. That is almost 3 new cars emerging into existence every single second, every single day. The global automotive industry has grown into a towering force, generating around $3.8 trillion in annual revenue, one of the largest economic engines humanity has ever created. It supports tens of millions of livelihoods, both seen and unseen, woven into every corner of the world. But this creation has a weight. Passenger vehicles alone account for about 8% of global CO2 emissions, a share significant enough to reshape energy policies across nations and to influence the very conversation about our planet's future. Here in the United States, the average vehicle on the road today is 12 years old. Most of the cars Americans are driving were built before the electric vehicle revolution had even begun, remnants of an earlier chapter still carrying us forward. The automobile did more than change how people traveled. It shaped where cities rose, where families could live, how economies expanded, and even how the climate itself has shifted. One invention, 140 years, and an impact still unfolding, still echoing through the world we inhabit today. The future of mobility drifts toward us like a quiet horizon, shimmering with possibilities we are only beginning to understand. And when we look back across the last 140 years, we're reminded of a simple truth. Whatever comes next often arrives not with predictability, but with wonder. Toyota now sets its sights on 2027, where a new kind of heart may beat inside the electric vehicle, a solid-state battery promising up to 750 miles on a single charge, and a return to full strength in just 10 minutes. If this vision grows large enough to touch the world, the last great hesitation around electric cars could fade like morning fog. And there is more. With vehicle-to-grid technology, the car begins to transform. No longer only a way to travel, it becomes a quiet companion to the home, ready to power it during a storm, to cradle sunlight gathered during the day, to share its stored energy with the wider world. A vehicle, yes, but also a moving piece of the energy landscape. Above the cities, another dream stirs. Companies like Joby Aviation and Archer are deep in the careful, deliberate process of FAA certification, preparing for electric air taxis that rise vertically like birds and drift across the sky. Urban air mobility, the old dream of the flying car, reborn, may arrive before the decade turns. And on the streets below, fleets of robotaxis from Waymo, Baidu, and others glide through city grids, quietly accumulating millions of autonomous miles. Some believe that within this very decade, the long-held idea of personal car ownership in cities may reach its peak and then gently begin to recede. Every era has carried its own quiet revolution, drifting through time like a changing wind. In 1886, it arrived as a humble 3-wheeled machine with a lawnmower engine, a small creation that nonetheless shifted the course of the world. By 1913, that spark had grown into a moving assembly line, placing that once miraculous machine into the hands of ordinary workers, like a river branching into countless new streams. In the 1950s, the revolution glimmered in chrome and tail fins, stretching across open highways that seemed to promise endless horizons. In the 1970s, it softened into a hard but necessary truth that nothing, not even the brightest dream, lasts forever. And today, it has reshaped itself again, becoming batteries and software and a global reimagining of everything we thought we understood. From Bertha Benz's brave 65 one-mile journey in 1886 to the 56 million electric vehicles traveling the world in 2024, the automobile has never stopped surprising us. It has never stopped dividing us. And it has never stopped connecting us. Like a long, winding road that still stretches forward, inviting us onward. The greatest road trip in history is still unfolding, still being driven with every passing mile. And if you've traveled all the way here with me, thank you, truly. This story took time, care, and a great deal of quiet research to bring together, and it means more than I can say that you chose to spend your time here. If this journey felt meaningful to you, please tap that like button. It helps others discover this path and keeps the channel moving forward.